Well, welcome back to another game week predictions video for the Premier League. I do want to say before I start this video, this is recorded before the second leg of the Champions League, so some sides that I'm predicting the results, we won't know how it's gone in the Champions League. Chelsea are currently playing Real Madrid and Manchester City have yet to play Bayern Munich, so I just thought let you know where we're at. Anyway, as I normally do with these videos, we're going to start off with my predictions for the last game week, so game week 31, and then we're going to jump into my game week 32 prediction. We're going to start off with Saturday's fixtures of Aston Villa versus Newcastle United. Now I predicted 2-1 to Villa. It was actually 3-0, and Watkins was there again as a Villa masterclass ended Newcastle's winning run. Watkins is some serious form at the moment, as are the entire Villa squad to be fair, and Newcastle were just totally outclassed by Emery's men. Brilliant football from Villa though. They're making a real statement that they could actually get European football this season. I would not be surprised if they did. Southampton versus Crystal Palace. Now, I predicted 3-0 to Palace. It was actually 2-0. And Roy makes it 3-3 as Eze was there to score a brace. And what I don't understand is how this Palace side was struggling to score before Roy returned. Eze was phenomenal here, and his second goal was absolutely class. The Saints did have their chances to be fair to them, but just could not finish. Then move on to Everton versus Fulham. I predicted 1-0 to Everton. It was actually 3-1 to Fulham. Fulham put their loss to West Ham behind them as they smashed the Toffees at Goodison. James, Reed and Wilson were all on the score sheet for the Cottagers as they looked to maintain a top half spot. Brilliant from Fulham though. They really did not like they were missing Mitrovic, which when he's out for quite a while, it's what you want, so fair play. Then we on to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Brentford. I predicted 2-1 to Brentford. It's 2-0 to Wolves. And Diego Costa grabbed his first Premier League goal since 2017 as Wolves saw off the Bees. Brilliant run from him to push the ball forward and a brilliant finish too. The Bees never really troubled Wolves for the most part. It was pretty much a Wolverhampton domination. Maybe not in every sense of the word, but they did look very, very solid. Then we move on to Tottenham Hotspur versus Bournemouth. I predicted 2-0 to Tottenham. It was 3-2 to Bournemouth. Bournemouth there was a very impressive fight back in London as a 95th minute goal from Awatara sealed the 3 points for the Cherries. Tottenham did Tottenham things again as they bottled their Champions League hopes. Now, they could still make it, but it's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good. Now move on to Chelsea versus Brighton Hove Albion. I predicted 3-1 to Brighton. It's actually 2-1. And Chelsea were once again outclassed in their own backyard. It was all level until Julio Enciso's screamer in the 69th minute won it for the Seagulls. Lampard has 3 losses from 3. What an appointment from Chelsea. Then we move on to Manchester City versus Leicester City. I predicted 4-0 to Manchester City. It was actually 3-1. Dean Smith returned to the Premier League, didn't get off to the best of starts, but against the City side, are we really surprised? City put the clash to bed within 25 minutes as Haaland struck with a brace, and John Stones scored an absolute brilliant goal to open the scoring. Leicester were just outclassed. It's as simple as that. Then we move on to Sunday's fixtures and we start off with West Ham United versus Arsenal. I predicted 3-0 to Arsenal. It was actually a 2-2 draw. After bottling to Liverpool, Arsenal bottled to West Ham as the Hammers come back from 2 goals down to share the points with the Gunners. Arsenal really aren't making securing the title easy for themselves. Fair play to West Ham though for that fight back. Then move on to Nottingham Forest versus Manchester United. I predicted 3-0 to Manchester United. It was just 2-0. Manchester United visited the City ground once again, and once again they came out victors. VAR missed a clear handball from Maguire that would have seen him sent off and potentially a very different match for Forest, but they were very lacklustre. 0 shots on target at home is very embarrassing. And finally the Monday fixture of Leeds United versus Liverpool. I predicted 2-1 to Liverpool. It was actually 6-1. Now I knew Leeds would get dominated, but not this dominated. It was a complete demolition job from Liverpool as Leeds fell to another massive home defeat. What's that? 11 goals in 2 home games? Or 11 goals in 2 matches? That is fucking crazy. It took 35 minutes for Liverpool to open the scoring, but it was in the second half where the goals really flowed. Okay, so that was a look back at my Game Week 31 predictions. As you guessed, I got no predictions correct. It's just becoming sad at this point. But we move into Game Week 32 and we start off with the Friday fixture of Arsenal versus Southampton. Now normally you'd think Arsenal would breeze past the Saints, but looking at their current results, I'm not so sure. Arsenal maintain their top spot whilst the Saints are sitting rock bottom, with both teams in desperate need of a win. Arsenal are missing Saliba and Zinchenko, and that is very, very apparent, especially in their clash against West Ham. Luckily for Arsenal fans, Zinchenko is expected to be back for this clash. I don't think Saliba is though, which is a big miss for Arsenal. Southampton have not been brilliant, but have grabbed some very shock results in London this season, drawing with Spurs and beating Chelsea. Now, they're not the best London sides, but they're big London sides nonetheless. The Gunners need to stop dropping points if they want to keep their title hopes alive, and I think they'll manage that at the Emirates. I'm saying 3-0 to Arsenal. I can't see Southampton beating Arsenal. I know they've bottled recently, but this Southampton side is nothing like Bournemouth or West Ham. Sorry, Southampton fans. To be fair, I couldn't see those sides beating Arsenal either. But even with those results, I can't see the Saints troubling Arsenal that much at all. Maybe a free kick from James Ward-Prowse, but I don't think Southampton have got much that could threaten Arsenal, but you never know. They could bottle it again. Then we move on to Saturday and we start off with Fulham versus Leeds United. Fulham host a struggling Leeds side at Craven Cottage. Fulham looked to be falling apart after their FA Cup match, but looked to have turned things around after last week's performance. Now I know, might be too early to call, but against Leeds, they've got a very good chance to prove that. Leeds, I think it's safe to say, have not been having a good time recently, and despite playing their last 2 matches at home, have conceded 11 goals. So it's not looking good for the Yorkshire side. Leeds find themselves 2 points clear of the relegation zone but risk slipping into it should they not be able to grab some vital points. Fulham looked to have resolved their goal scoring issues with their top goal scorer still suspended, but obviously that remains to be seen if they can keep it up. I'm going to say 2-1 to Fulham. I do think Fulham should have a pretty easy time of it. Leeds are not in a great space at the moment, and conceding that amount of goals would have really rocked their confidence. Fulham aren't nearly as prolific in front of goal, but their performance against Everton shows they do have goal scorers in their ranks. Leeds have scored in the games where they were dominated, and I'm sure they will here too, but I really cannot see them getting anything from this match, and honestly, it could be a much wider margin. I think without Mitrovic, Fulham will still struggle to score goals. And then move on to Crystal Palace versus Everton. Roy will be back at Selhurst Park looking to make it 4 from 4. The appointment of Roy Hodgson was an absolute masterclass from the Palace board, as he's made this low scoring side look like they score goals for fun. I know many of us joked that just let him retire in peace, but what a job he's done so far. And you know what? I hope he keeps up the work until the end of the season, because that is just phenomenal. Yeah, Roy, big fan of the channel obviously. Dyche, he is stable with the Everton boat, but they still hover above the relegation zone, and his work is not done yet. He set up Everton to be quite solid defensively, but they've still been shipping goals. I mean, that Fulham clash, they shipped 3 without Mitrovic, so Everton still have a lot of work to do to save themselves. I do think Palace will struggle against this Everton side to start with, much like they did against Leeds and Southampton, opening the scoring in the second halves both times. I can see it being very similar here as well. I'm going to say 2-0 to Palace. I do see it going similarly to Palace's match against Southampton. Everton can be really solid in defence, but Palace will find a way through, as they've shown time and time again since Roy came in. This is helped by the various goal-scoring exploits of various Palace players. Could be like 4 or 5, but I doubt it against Everton, because they can set up to be quite defensive and quite hard to break down, but you never know these days. And then move on to Liverpool versus Nottingham Forest. Oh God. Forest travelled to Anfield in a match I'm sure they'd rather not play. Liverpool have not been enjoying great success this season, especially when you compare that to seasons past. But they look to be turning around their results as they aim to march up the table in a final bid for Europe. Forest, on the other hand, have not been having a good time recently, currently winless in 10, and as we know, their away form is absolutely atrocious. Despite the result against Manchester United, Forest looked decent for flashes, but it seems like the team has no fight after they concede a goal, as we've seen time and time again. That issue is only compounded when we play away. Liverpool were surprised at the City ground as Forest managed to cling on to a 1-0 win over the Merseyside team. I can't really see there being any of that here, and I only see one thing happening between these two sides, and that's 4-0 to Liverpool. I would be very surprised if Forest could get anything from this match. Liverpool are coming into form towards the tail end of the season and will be looking to avenge that result from earlier in the season as well. Shipping 4 may be a conservative estimate from me after how much they put past Leeds, but Navas has saved Forest blushes many times already this season, and he'll do it again here. Liverpool at Anfield are a far better side than when they play away. And while there were some shocks this season in Liverpool, I do not see Forest adding to that list. And as much as I would love it, I'm not that delusional. Then move on to Brentford versus Aston Villa. The Bees host an informed Villa side that are making a shock charge for Europe in the tail end of the season. Brentford are normally quite good at home, and despite Newcastle ending that great run of form they had, the Brentford Community Stadium is still a fortress, and they'll still make it look difficult for their opponents. Unai Emery has turned around Villa and will be looking to exploit any weaknesses that they can against Brentford. As we saw against Newcastle, they'll try and try again, and eventually they'll break through. Newcastle is a very good benchmark for each team, to be fair, as Brentford were a bit unlucky not to get anything from that match, whereas Villa cruised to a victory. Both managers are very good tactically, and I'm sure this match will be a great watch. I'm saying 3-1 to Villa. I think the Villains will continue their brilliant run here. Well, yes, Brentford are very formidable at home. Newcastle have shown they're not unbeatable, and they're just the latest side to do it. They obviously have been beaten at home, but they had a really good run for quite a while. Brentford do seem to perform well against teams above them, and currently Villa are one of those sides, so we could see that classic Brentford underdog story. Villa looking really fine form at the moment, and honestly look to be trending for a European spot, which I would not be surprised to see them grab. Villa are a formidable side this season, and could beat anyone on their day. It'll be a very tough match, and it'll be very tough for them to break down Brentford, but I can see them managing time and time again. And then move on to Leicester City versus Wolverhampton Wanderers in a match where I wish both teams could lose. Leicester are currently wallowing in the relegation zone, but are only 2 points from safety, whereas Wolves have moved 7 points clear and don't look to be sliding in the relegation zone anytime soon. Leicester brought in Dean Smith in a bid to stave off relegation, and he was given a baptism of fire against City in his first match back. Leicester, despite playing the reigning champions, still looked lacklustre, but gave us a pretty good idea of how the Foxes will set up under him. He's done some good stuff in management, but also some not so good stuff. Lopetegui on the other hand has got his Wolves playing really well again, and most importantly scoring goals and picking up vital points when they matter. It couldn't have come at a better time for Wolves, as they did risk sliding back into a relegation scrap, but now look to have avoided that for the moment. I would not be surprised if they just slowly creep away from the relegation zone, because they're playing some good football at the moment. I'm going to say 2-0 to Wolves. I can't see Leicester getting anything from this clash either. Neither side have had a great season, but Leicester have had the worst of it, despite the squad they have, which on paper I would say is better than Wolves' team. The summing's just not clicking for them at the moment. Maddison, he was their main player before the break, but is currently out of form, and you can see that Leicester's performances have suffered because of it. Without Maddison, they are not the team they are with him, if that makes sense, or with him fit, should I say. And I don't think Wolves will be challenged by the relegation zone for the rest of the season. I think they're pretty much guaranteed safety, in my opinion, of course. Obviously results change, but I think Wolves have got a really good shot at staying up, but I don't think Leicester have, and I think they'll lose to Wolves here as well. And finally, the Sunday fixtures, and we start off with Newcastle United versus Tottenham Hotspur. This is a huge battle for top 4, as 4th place Newcastle host 5th place Tottenham. The top 4 race has really heated up this season, with at least 3 teams competing for those final 2 spots. Newcastle have been in better form than Spurs, especially recent time as well, so that'll be on their side. Both teams lost their last clash, but it would be Spurs who felt most hard done by, as they lost to a bottom half Bournemouth team. But Danjuma got his first goal, so I guess there's that. Spurs' performances have not improved since Conte's departure, and Spurs don't look assured in their performances anymore. I can see losing to Bournemouth, at the death especially, and at home, rocking their confidence. Newcastle were beaten by an Emery masterclass, and with a team in such good form, that's not really surprising. I don't think they'll really be too hard done by, because it was brilliant from Villa. I'm saying 2-1 to Newcastle. I think Newcastle will beat Spurs. The Magpies' recent form is much better than Spurs has been, and they look a lot more assured in those matches too, even when they've lost. Luckily for Spurs, Son seems to have found his shooting boots again, scoring in each of his last 2 matches, and if he can keep that up, he's definitely going to do some good business for Tottenham. And it's Tottenham, they bottle their matches and they bottle top 4, it's just what they do. And finally, Bournemouth versus West Ham United. The Cherries host West Ham United, as they're both hovering just above the relegation zone. Both sides are at least 4 points clear, but this is a huge clash for both sides as they aim to avoid relegation and survive another season in the Premier League. Bournemouth, they've seen an increase in form recently, and should they have a good chance of staying up. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because they show some fight. When it matters, they show some fight and they put in some good performances, and that's all you could ask for your team. West Ham have also seen an uptick in form too recently, grabbing vital points in their quest for Premier League survival, holding top teams like Arsenal to a draw. And speaking of draws, I think this will be a 2-2 draw. I can see both sides earning a point here. They are both quite evenly matched sides at the moment, and I don't see much separating either side. West Ham have come from behind against Arsenal, and Bournemouth beat Tottenham in London, so, both teams have done some very good, both teams got some really good results in recent times, so it's going to be a very interesting clash between these two. Both sides have shown their quality in these matches, and I see this being a very tough clash for both sides. I don't think either team has it in them to come out on top against one another, so I think they'll share the points on the coast. But you never know. Bournemouth, they love scoring goals at the death, and West Ham, they just love drawing, so who knows. I've been O2GT, these have been my Premier League predictions for gameweek 32. If you have any of your own, please leave them in the comments. And I shall see you guys in the next video. Peace.